Hey, Chris, Liege Games, let's do this. What do you need to know for the best Kickstarter game found games that are launching in this upcoming next week, the last week of frickin' September? How the heck is it already the end of September? I mean, that's ridiculous. This has gone by incredibly fast. The end of summer, the beginning of fall. So, again, there are a few huge names launching this week. One I'm super excited about. One I know a ton of you are super excited about. So let's get those right at the beginning. I will preference those right at the beginning, and you can then let me know how interested you are after you hear more from that side of things. As always, if you are willing and able, give me a sub. Always helpful, helping put things on your radar, helping put me on other people's radar. So appreciated. Always appreciate the views. Enough rambling. Let's do this. Look, first up, we are talking about the thing that's probably going to crush everything else out there in terms of funding, in terms of attention, in terms of hype, and that's Voidfall. This is Mindclash's latest game, an exploration into 4X, ironically. And, I mean, my wording at least. This is the one that's going to command all the attention. This is the one that people are going to have all the eyes on. Well, at least until a week later when the other 4X that's going to be launching, going to having a bunch of eyes, Fractal is going to launch, and we're going to have a head-to-head comparison then, essentially. So, Voidfall, Buckle, Turksy, they're going to show us what they got, because this is both a cooperative as well as a competitive 4X, where you have this darkness, the void fall, or the void that's itself trying to take over the galaxy. And so depending on which mode you're going to be doing, either the competitive or the cooperative, depends on how you're interacting with it. If you're doing competitive, well, you still have to deal with the void fall because it takes things over and it can still win the game. If you're doing cooperative, well, I mean, that's a little bit more straightforward, right? Pandemic with a 4X, which again is completely out there from that side of things. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they can do, what they can pull off, and honestly, what the price point is. If you go over to the Board Game Geek page and you head over to the picture section right now, you can see a little bit more of what's there, and you can see a little bit of how modular this is going to be. There are a lot of designer diaries out there already on the Board Game Geek forums that break down a lot of the things that you're going to have questions about in terms of mechanics, in terms of how the fighting is going to working, and how the exploring is going to work, and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, with a game like this, there's going to be a lot of iconography. So there's going to be a lot of overhead, like I just mentioned. Now, obviously, there's also going to be a lot of different cards that you're going to be using, creating, partaking in, and utilizing. But there's just a lot of different aspects going on, and you just need to be aware of that going into this, because Mind Clash games are not light games to begin with. Now, I don't take a whole lot of weight with the actual weight listed on Board Game Geek, so I doubt it's probably going to be a 4. It's not going to be less than a 3, though, you know, comparatively wise. So as a 4X, are you going to like it from that side of things? Now, again, like I just mentioned, the forums over here are full of designer diaries. So 10 different ones already. And so you can see a little bit of everything from looking back on how they've done it, 3-player playthrough coming from Hardbeat Cardboard, differences between the modes, the cooperative and the solo, the asymmetry that's there, the exterminate, the attacking aspect of things, everything that you would want to know from that aspect. And it even give you a look at the prototype here. We'll pull that up in a second. And the other EXs that you're going to be knowing, the technologies, the game cycles, and how you're going to be realizing and utilizing the resources. So again, here you go. You can see a little bit of what this looks like. I mean, look at how modular this is. Look at how much stuff there is going on. This is very busy. Very busy. It's much heavier than anything I am ever probably going to be able to play on a consistent basis. So that's the main reason I hesitate on this. Now, it looks beautiful. You can see also these miniatures. I'll see if I can blow one up here so that you can take a little bit of a closer look. And so again, the question is just going to be, because I feel like on some of the other images, they were painted. And so is that going to be 2 different pledge levels? Because I think Mind Clash Games previously did that with one of their other, or 2 of their other games. So again, what is the price point going to be? You can see on the different sectors that there are things that you're going to be putting on the sector there, things that are there, and then as well as the values of the ships on the ships themselves, and dice that go along with that. So there's a lot of aspects to each one of those. But all in all, I mean, this is going to be very interesting to see what happens. I honestly have no idea. This could hit like 200,000. This could do 7 figures easily. I have no idea, anywhere in between. But anyway, it's launching on the 28th. It's going to be the most hyped. It's going to be the most talked about. Second on that list, though, is going to be Beast. And I have a copy upstairs, and I need to play it this weekend. And I can hopefully get my thoughts out several days after launch. I don't think it's going to be on launch day, unfortunately, because I want to give it a little bit more of a run through than just, you know, once or twice quickly. but it's very asymmetric. This is a hidden movement asymmetric game where you have on one side the beast and the other side the hunters. And it's taking in a different mechanism to show where the beast may have been recently. And the hunters are having to expose it, and you're buying using grudges is the terminology or the currency to upgrade either the hunter or the beast, depending on which side you're on. And you can play it anywhere from 1 to 4 players. So you can have one person always being the beast, and then anywhere from 1 to 3 people being the hunters. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more fun. I would say probably at a higher player count of 3 or 4, just so that you're not having to control more than one hunter, because I believe that is the criteria at the 2-player count where you're having to control, I think, 2 hunters. So I would probably prefer it at that higher player count from that side of things. But it also doesn't look as long as some of the other ones in addition. There are certain win conditions as well on both sides that are a little bit asymmetric. Like if you can just hold off on the beast, like the beast has to be aggressive in this game, because if you can hold off as hunters, like then your reinforcements arrive and you can win the game. And so that's going to prevent sort of the turtling that I guess you could have otherwise with a beast sort of scenario where you could just sort of snipe and be very passive and lurk a lot. Well, you have to be aggressive. And so hopefully both sides need to be equally aggressive so that the game flows and plays very quickly and very engaging. So I like the idea of the upgrade aspects as well that I've read through the rulebook of. So we'll see. And they have made it clear that there are going to be multiple beasts as well. And actually the rulebook actually says, like, if you're playing this for the first time or you're playing it with this player count for the first time, you know, we recommend starting with this beast. We recommend starting with these hunters, which is always nice to see. So you're not just like floundering in the middle of like a super complex level 3 beast or like a super complex, I'll use a different example, Spirit Island, like super complex, like moderate or high complexity for like your very first time. And you're going, oh geez, how does the shadow guy work? What do you mean he doesn't actually kill people? He generates fear. Why would I ever want that? That seems weird. Giving a little advice already from the get-go. This is probably the one that I'm going to be most likely to get out of any of these this week, just because I love the idea of this, and I have absolutely nothing hidden movement-wise in my collection. Well, I take that back. I have one Japanese game that is hidden movement. Otherwise, I have nothing else, and so I'm looking for something like this to begin with. So if everything lines up, it's going to be super strong interest from that standpoint. Next up, we have Drop Drive. Oh, by the way, these Beast and Voidfall are both launching on the 28th. Next up on the 28th, we have Drop Drive. If this looks familiar, this is from the people who did Dungeon Drop, and it's basically what looks like a space version of Dungeon Drop. And I guess the question that you have to ask yourself, for 25 or 40 bucks or 50 bucks, however much both of them were last time, how much does this appeal to you? As doing it now instead of with the dungeon fantasy theme, with the space theme where you're mining asteroids for resources and maximizing and interacting that way. Honestly, Dungeon Drop was always one of those games I like the idea of, but like I have young kids and like my kids are going to drop this everywhere and there's no way they would stay inside this perimeter. And my kids also like the spatial elements. I'm not sure they would do that. I just don't know if that would be for them. And I'm not sure it's for me. And so if it's not going to be for me and I'm not sure if it's for them, that's the reason I passed on it the first time around. But I think you're getting a different genre of appeal with the space theme. And it's the other second probably biggest common trope theme that we see across the board in terms of board games. So lots of people are probably going to be very interested. It's probably going to have a very core following and a very good following just based on the success of the other ones. So we'll see how it does when it launches on the 28th. Next up, launching on the 30th now, we have Tales from the Red Dragon Inn. Now, if you're familiar with the Red Dragon Inn as the card game, this is the cooperative, sort of more of a crawl, scenario-based game for 1 to 4 players. And as opposed to the other game with its unique mechanisms, this game is where you are actually doing the day job of the adventurers that are the main characters of that game, and you are, fighting AI-controlled bad guys. And this is sort of what they've got going, at least picture-wise, on the Board Game Geek page, which doesn't really tell you as much as I would like. I just missed out on the availability window of being able to get a physical copy, so unfortunately I wasn't able to do that, but I know they've been doing it online, I think with Tabletop Simulator, so I would imagine that you're going to be able to test it as well, or play through it during the campaign and get a little bit of an idea. It looks like, I'm guessing, maybe standees. I don't know if it's going to be miniature based. I don't really have a good sense of that. But clearly, again, as a cooperative crawler, you've got a hex based system that you're using. And then you have upgrades and abilities and weapons that you're going to be having there with asymmetric powers. And you're going to have some dice rolling, whatever happens. So again, very interesting. You can see here on the right side of the board that appears to be the enemies and the enemy tracks and how you're keeping track of everything that's going on with them and how they're maneuvering and being placed around there. Now, I'm guessing, just based on this picture, I would interpret my previous statement as maybe standees for the bad guys and miniatures for the good guys. But We'll see when it launches on the 28th. Again, price point. Is it going to appeal to those who are fans of the game in the other genre? Or is this going to be more of the dungeon crawl only? Or is there going to be some sort of Venn diagram hybrid of people that like both? I honestly have no idea. But it's interesting to see, and it's an interesting take on things. Hopefully they've got enough interesting and unique mechanics in the actual gameplay to set it apart from the other dungeon crawls that are out there ad nauseum. So we'll see when it launches. Next up, launching on the 28th, we have Perpetuity Grave Descent. Now, this is a very interesting game. This is a 1 to 5 player, obviously sci-fi, where these planets are sort of drifting down and chaos is happening and everything's getting destroyed, where it is worker placement, and you are having to either be competitive or cooperative, which again is a different twist on things that we're not necessarily used to seeing. Here you can get a little bit of a better sense of the setup in terms of what it's going to look like. And they say on the description that it's a very interesting take on the worker placement because your lesser workers, your less powerful workers are going to degrade essentially. And so they're going to become less useful and less effective over time. So how are you going to cope with that? How are you going to compensate that as you're trying to gather your resources, as you're trying to upgrade your ship, as you're trying to save villagers, aliens from these dying planets in the first place? Now, if you're interested, there's actually the rule book already on Board Game Geek, so check that out if you really want to know more information prior to launch, as well as there are 3 videos up there in addition, one going through the tutorial and a playthrough that looks about 30 minutes long. So again, a lot of information actually out for a game that I was not even aware of prior to this. So as a different space-themed worker placement style of things, looks like it's doing something a little bit unique. I highly suggest that you check out the rule book, in addition to checking out the campaign when it launches. Next up is Demon Castle Mononoke, and this is an interesting one. I remember talking about this one several months ago, and then they ended up changing the name slightly, and they ended up changing the launch date altogether. And so this one is supposed to launch on the 1st of October at the very end of the week. This is a 3 to 5 player social deduction bluffing-esque type of game where it's sort of also semi-cooperative. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be basically going to sleep at night, and you are taking the role of heroes in this cursed castle, defending it against bizarre spirits. So the interesting thing about this game is that you have one hero set on watch, and that hero is the only one that knows the strength, the weaknesses, the abilities, and whether or not the spirit that's coming is friend or foe. And so they have to rally or not their allies depending on how they want the outcome to be. They talk about it that it's going to have a blind bidding mechanic as well. So it really looks like it's something very different from a Resistance a la coup sort of game. And the other interesting aspect that they say right here is that there is going to be partial information, like I mentioned, but if the castle falls, as you can see here, like Cutthroat Caverns, nobody wins. But if you play it too safe, somebody else might get more points than you. So again, very interesting. I could see this being very interesting from a deduction side of things as something that is just not purely throwing random accusations at someone else at the table. But otherwise, I have no idea. There's only a little bit of information. You can see a couple pictures here. There's no videos and there's no files, unfortunately. So we don't have a whole lot to go off of yet. But would this be something more like the Oriflamme of that nature? Obviously a little bit less information, but a little bit more bluffing as well. I don't know, but this one could be good depending on the aesthetic and depending on the price point. This could be a sleeper of the week. So check it out when it launches on the 1st on Friday. Next up, also launching on the 1st, is the Streets of Newark. This is a 2 to 5 player game where you are mafia bosses, essentially, and you are trying to control areas of the city. And it's interesting because it's also a hidden movement style game where you are moving your group of mobsters around the city, and where you go determines what you can do. But you're blindly moving, so if you end up in the same place as someone else, then there's conflict. There's going to be some asymmetry with these factions where each lieutenant of the factions has asymmetric abilities, but there are also 5 different victory conditions, which reminds me of sort of Lords of Hellas in the sense that there were like 3 or 4 different main victory conditions, but as the gameplay played out, that most of the time people were going for 1 or 2 of them, and the third one really was kind of left by the wayside. So obviously they say that the abilities of the lieutenants are going to help influence which one of those you would go after, but are all 5 in a game like this going to be equally balanced? That's my biggest concern. Or would you be better off trimming 1 or 2 of them and having just 3? So we'll see when it launches on the 1st, but it'll be interesting, what they do with that and how it actually plays. So there you go. Next up, we have launching on the 29th, City of the Great Machine. Now, this is a very interesting game for 2 to 4 players. It's a 1 versus all. But if you want to think of it in a different way, this reminds me sort of a steampunk version of the Matrix, where you have the Great Machine going up against the revolutionaries who are trying to cause 3 riots in order to win, or the Great Machine is trying to achieve their master plan. Each side comes with different situations, and there is modularity that you're going to be doing in terms of the board game setup each time. there's going to be hidden movement in how the heroes are going to different districts in order to collect the resources that they need to cause these riots in the first place. Here you can see a smattering of the heroes that are going to be offered, and here you can see some of the servants that are going to be employed in the service of the Great Machine. There is a rule book already out. I'm not sure if this is public knowledge because they sent it to me and see if I was interested in doing anything for them. I emailed back, but I haven't heard back anything yet in terms of that side of things. So we'll kind of see. This is a very ambitious, very interesting game, and I'm a big fan of steampunk, so I like that side of things. And there's a lot of things that you need to know, including this progress board, which is 3 discs that you're going to be rotating around, that you're going to be having to mitigate and use in terms of the master track plan, the pointer, and the discontent track. So again, very interesting elements there to be aware of. Event decks, preparations on both sides, asymmetric powers. You can see a little bit of the setup right here. So again, it's a very interesting thing in terms of what's different out there compared to other games. You can see the 5 different phases right here, and they go through it. Now, this is a little bit of a longer read, if you will. I think it's something like 36 pages, but it's definitely got a different aesthetic, and it's definitely going to have me peaked on the first day when it launches to see sort of what all it entails, what they're looking like, the incentivized, what else video-wise is going to be out there, since I don't have hands-on from that side of things. So I'm going to be watching this one pretty closely, and it looks very intriguing from that side of things. So they also have their own website, so if you want to go over to their website, you can see a little bit more of the unboxing and some of the other videos. Everything that I just kind of said is all on here. So if you don't want to listen to me, you can go check this out as well. Here's that progress board, and there you go. Backstory, more pictures. There you go. And that's City of the Great Machine. Check it out if you're interested. I'm going to talk about this one last up because I have a feeling that this one, at least I was told previously, they had said that this one was going to be launching in September. Well, this is the last week of September, like I said at the beginning of the video, so I would assume it's going to be launching. Now, they're going to be potentially announcing the date the day after I'm filming this, so I may put in the comment section below the actual date it's launching, but I would assume that it's going to be in this coming week. Now, it's going to be very interesting, and I've seen people already be very divided on this because Queen Games is launching the 3rd and 4th in this Stephen Feld collection when they haven't delivered on the first 2 already. And people are not very pleased about that. And you had people that paid for the 3rd and 4th already, and they're wondering again if they're going to have to pay for separate shipping in this one that they've already paid for on the previous ones. Are they going to be combined? So if you're getting it now, are you going to pay less? Like, what is this whole thing going to look like? And there's the whole, okay, New York, no one even knows about that game to begin with. Like, Marrakesh is another reskin of one of the old Stephen Feld games, but New York is a completely new one that people were paying for on the first campaign. So that's crazy to me. Just so they could get the matching set with the matching numbers. Anyway, though, it's going to be interesting to see what this looks like from a Feldian side of things, especially with the last campaign where there was a ton of information for one of the games, but there wasn't a whole lot of information nearly comparatively for the other game, Amsterdam. Is it going to be the same thing for Marrakesh and New York City here or not? I have no idea. Queen as well is all over the place in terms of consistency and just what to expect with these campaigns. So honestly, I'm clueless. I have no idea. Again, this one could be through the roof. It could be low as well. I have mixed feelings on it from that side of things. Thankfully, though, the Bruges remake was the only one that really interested me. I guess I would pick up Amsterdam potentially on the secondary market, but right now, neither of these has any pedigree to make me think, but I'll be watching it because maybe it will catch my eye. Maybe it will, and I'll be interested, but also these are going to be deluxe just like the other ones were. So the price point is going to be like 100 per, because that's what it was basically for the deluxe versions on the previous ones. I can't imagine it's going to be any less. So again, how much is the price point going to limit things, especially when the other two were marketably probably the hotter or the more out of print than these two. So there you go. Launching sometime next week, to be determined. Soon. Okay, that's it. That's the roundup. That's what's the best of upcoming next week. Obviously, like I said, Voidfall and Beast are getting a bunch of the eyes. But again, the first couple weeks of October are going to be crazy too. I think there's going to be the first week and the third week are going to be big name droppers. And so we'll kind of see what else comes up in between. There's always a bunch of stuff that's always interesting. And I love talking about it. And that's why I do these videos. And that's why you guys subscribe. So that's why you put up with me, I guess. As always, let me know what you think. Let me know what you're backing. Always interested to see, always interested to hear other opinions, other thoughts. Let's talk about some TV here in a second as well. What's going on? Squid. Squid on Netflix is what you should go watch right now. It's a Korean drama that is like the Hunger Games with adults set in Korea in the modern day and age. Basically, they round up a whole bunch of people that are in a bunch of debt and they have them face off. And this is going to sound stupid. It's going to sound corny. Hear me out, though. They have them face off playing children's games in life or death situations. So it's done really, really well. It's not a very long series. It's only 9 episodes. I highly recommend you go check it out from that side of things. The other one, Jaguar on Netflix, which is Spanish. I highly recommend you check this one out as well. It is set in sort of the post-World War II, where the Nazis have all fled, and you've got this group of people that are tracking down the Nazis, sort of like that one that was on Amazon, only this one is actually good and not as corny. So, highly recommend you check that out as well if you're looking for anything from that side of things. Apart from that, I'm digging into the first season of The Killing. Now, if you've seen The Killing from AMV, if you've seen The Killing from the English one, I'm not watching the English one. I'm watching the arguably better one, the Danish version of it. And I can't mispronounce that title. I'll just, link it up here so that you can read it instead. But it's great. It's great too. It's a little bit slower. There's a lot more political intrigue that is tying in than I was expecting. It's a little bit slower going now that I'm about almost a dozen episodes in than I was expecting, but it's still very solid. Yeah, that's about it. That's about what I'm watching. What are you watching? Want some recommendations? Let me know. Obviously, I think the Marvel comparison video was sort of a pseudo experiment flop over the last couple days. So we'll see if I do more of that in the future. If I don't, well, you know what? I might just do it anyway because, view counts, who cares? I like talking about the stuff and it's interesting. And if you like it, great. If you don't, you can just pass on it, right? So that's it. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening and rambling and ranting. I'll see you guys around. Stay classy. Have a great weekend. Play something cool or just have a good time.